So welcome everybody to our discussion today. I want to thank both Jill from the Belleville Chamber and Leslie Lavender from the Prince Edward County Chamber for co-hosting this event with the Quinte West Chamber today. As the Bay of Quinte riding, it seems to make a lot of sense for us to do these sorts of presentations as a riding, as a region, because we all know that people move about this region. They live in one community and work in another, and everything is so interconnected here in the Bay of Quinte. I would like to welcome our two guest speakers today. We have an extra guest, which is going to give us an even broader perspective on some of the business issues that people are facing. So first of all, welcome to our own MPP, Todd Smith. So the Honorable Todd Smith, Bay of Quinte, is the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services and MPP of the Bay of Quinte region. In 2018, Smith was elected in the new Bay of Quinte riding. Premier Doug Ford named him Government House Leader and Minister of Government and Consumer Services. Following that, he was named Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, while remaining Government House Leader. And today, he is currently serving as the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services. Also joining us today is the Honorable Prabmeet Sarkaria. He's the Associate Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction. Mr. Sarkaria is a Canadian lawyer and politician who is currently serving as the Associate Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction for the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. He was elected to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario during the 2018 general election. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. I want to let everybody know that the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen is open. Many of you have sent in questions ahead of time to discuss some of the business issues today, but we are looking forward to receiving more questions throughout the presentation. And I know that Leslie and Jill are going to be joining me with posing some of these questions and trying to get answers to some of the issues that everybody's having. So to our own MPP, Todd Smith, please take it away.
All right, thanks Suzanne, and thanks Jill and Leslie for hosting this today, and thanks to my colleague Prab for joining us all the way from Brampton. And we look forward to getting his remarks here in a couple minutes. I just wanted to start off by saying I'd hope we'd never be in a position where we had to curtail business activity in our province for a second time. But that's where we find ourselves right now, given the rise in COVID-19 cases that we had just prior to Christmas. And it's an uncomfortable position for both of us, Prab and myself, and certainly Premier Ford. But we do know as well how well Hastings and Prince Edward is faring, and that includes obviously my riding of Bay of Quinte. In recent weeks, we've constantly been among the leaders in the province when it comes to low case counts. And we had been in the yellow zone for a time, and with zero after zero after zero being reported this week from the Hastings and Prince Edward District Health Unit for new cases in the area, we would be back in the green zone right now in our region. So one of the top performers, if you want to call it that, across the entire province. And I can tell you too that the numbers are starting to trend in the right direction for Ontario. So, you know, I think there was a lot of question about whether the new lockdown that came into effect on Boxing Day was actually going to have an impact. But what we've seen is the number of cases going down and a steady trajectory in the right direction. So we weren't doing that well prior to Christmas, and it was really putting a strain on our hospitals and our ICU admissions. But since November, the number of cases in our ICUs has doubled twice. So we went from 100 cases of COVID-19 in our ICUs to 400 cases. And that really puts a strain on our intensive care units and our entire hospital system. And it's a real concern. And that's why we moved when we did to bring in this latest lockdown on Boxing Day. We had to act quickly and stop that trend. And, you know, they were fairly drastic measures, but as I say, they are working. It's been really interesting being back here in the constituency. I haven't had to be in Toronto all that much, because of the stay-at-home order and the lockdown. So I've been spending a lot more time at my constituency office, and my constituency staff are constantly riding the teeter-totter or on the seesaw with calls coming in here. There are so many people that don't believe that COVID-19 is real, especially in this area because we haven't seen the cases. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got people saying that we're not going far enough. So finding the balance is so important with our government, and that's what we're trying to do. Keep economic activity going, keep our businesses opening with curbside and those types of programs. Well, at the same time, keeping people safe and trying to keep our hospital capacity there for when we need it. So we've learned all kinds of important lessons throughout the pandemic. We've continued to offer necessary medical procedures in this second wave. We're back in the first wave. We did have to cancel a lot of those elective surgeries because we just didn't know what was coming next. And we are very, very, very thankful that our children in this region are back in class, back in student in-person learning in our school system, which started on Monday. And you may have heard today that we've announced another 4 regions across the province will be back to in-class learning. It's so important for, the social reasons, for obviously education reasons, but really mental health reasons as well, because the pandemic, it's had an impact obviously on businesses, but it's had an impact on mental health as well. So I know Prab is going to talk about a lot of the different programs that have been available and are available to small businesses throughout the pandemic. And I'm real happy that 33 different Quinte area businesses, and thanks to Prab and his office for providing this information to our office, 33 Quinte area businesses have taken advantage of the Digital Main Street program, moving your business online if you weren't already there, and also the student support squad, which is out there kind of like our own version of the Geek Squad, to help you get online and move your business online. If you're like me, you're not that tech savvy. I have lots of kids around me that help do that, and if you need help, that help is available too. So 33 different businesses have taken advantage of those services. So I'm not going to talk for any longer, but I'm going to introduce Prab, and Suzanne kind of already did that. But Prab is from the Brampton area, as I mentioned, and our Associate Minister for Small Business and Red Tape, which is a part of the file that I used to hold for 2019. And he's a big Toronto Raptors fan. And he's not a bad basketball player himself either. He stands about 7'2", so he gets a little bit closer to the hoop than most of us. Anyway, Prab, thanks a lot for joining us today, and I know our members are going to enjoy hearing your message. So thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Todd, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you. As Todd mentioned, I've had the opportunity not only to work very closely with Todd as I took over some of the file from him about a year and a half ago. Really, basically, was able to take credit for all of his great work over the past year and a half that he laid the foundation for. But this has been a significantly challenging time for small businesses across the province. But I really wanted to start off by giving a compliment to my colleague because sometimes at Queen's Park, you can really get caught up in just a bit of a bubble there. And I think Minister Smith, Todd Smith, brings a very important perspective, not only to the cabinet table, but when we're having our conversations with our health tables. I think Minister Smith is probably the loudest voice in terms of representing his region that has been probably faring one of the best in all of the province in terms of a balanced approach economically. Previous to this province-wide shutdown, you saw a framework being put into place. A lot of that was, advocacy for members like Todd to ensure that businesses in their areas could continue to operate safely and in a manner that allowed to balance both the economics and the health of this province. So He brings a great perspective from that lens, works with our health table to ensure that the voices of the businesses in these chambers are heard, at the provincial level, and a significant voice in that. And I think he has, helped shape a lot of the discussions around how the provinces react. Now, unfortunately, we were in a situation with the numbers got so out of hand that we had to do a province-wide lockdown, and we hope that with the great numbers coming out of both Prince Edward and Hastings, that some of the best in the province, that we can continue to work with our health officials and really see how we can get our businesses back up and running again. That being said, we still understand that there's no sugarcoating it for businesses right now. This is probably one of the most difficult periods of time that any businesses will have to go through to continue operations. But, we've tried to put forward significant supports for businesses to weather this storm. For example, the small business support grant that was just put forward, about 2 weeks ago, where it's a very easy application. Any business that has been restricted or shut down because of the government's orders would be able to apply for this grant. At the minimum, you will get $10,000, but you will be matched dollar to dollar up to a $20,000 revenue loss. And so there's a significant opportunity for businesses to take advantage of that. And we're not going to tell you how to spend that money. That is up to the business owner themselves. They have the flexibility to spend it. I've personally gone through the application, and one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that it's an easy application. It doesn't take more than 15 to 20 minutes if you have all of your information. With that, we've also put forward, businesses that are currently in a lockdown zone that have been restricted, 100% coverage of your hydro bills, 100% coverage of any of your property tax bills. So, we really urge you to apply to those programs as well. If you're a business that is within 2 to 9 employees, and we're looking at more ways to increase some of the eligibility for all these programs as we continue to have conversations on roundtables like this. You can access PPE funding for up to $1,000 for your business. It's a $65 million program that the business that we put forward. As Todd mentioned earlier, Digital Main Street is another program that you can use to digitize your business, build an online presence. I would say that Quinte and Prince Edward and Hastings has probably been the biggest beneficiary of this program, with over $120,000 invested in their area. Digital service squads. These are all supports that local businesses can use and help them kind of digitize their operation, use digital marketing, use e-commerce, and embrace that. And we really want to help and see how we can do that. On top of that, the federal government also has significant support from rent relief to some loan programs as well. But primarily what we want to be here to do today is I'm here to listen. If there's any programs or suggestions on changes to programs, if there's issues accessing these programs, these are all very valuable feedback for both myself and Todd here that we can then go back and work on and fix. But we want to make sure that our response to the pandemic is one that is measured by both from a health lens and an economic lens. And we want to make sure the support is there to help all of these businesses through this period. You can access all of this information on a single portal website, ontario.ca/small business. That website will give you a link to all the programs that I've spoken about, and also includes mental health supports, financial planning supports if needed by businesses. So that is a fulsome list is on that page for any supports from the Ontario government. So, with that, I don't want to take up too much time because I think we all want to hear from the businesses and take some of your questions. So with that, I will pass it back over to the team.
Thanks, Prab. Is Suzanne?
I am here. So yeah, so I think if you've given a good update of an overview of where we're at, the situation that we're in, and I know that some of the questions that we've received ahead of time are probably not going to be the first time that you've seen them. And one of the ones that we've been hearing from quite a bit is, the whole box store Walmart issue. It's been so frustrating for our small retailers and other service oriented businesses to see the full parking lots at Walmarts and things like that. So I think that there's a hope that, once we reach that February 9th date, there's going to be some room there to allow, especially areas like ours that are essentially in the green area, where we've proven that not only, as our health unit doing a good job and our residents, but our businesses as well. They've done everything they're supposed to do. Even before Christmas, they were already putting out messaging that, if you lived outside of the area, if you lived in one of the hot zones, don't come here for a haircut. Don't come here to stay in our hotels. Don't come, So I think that they've been proven as good stewards of this. And I just want to know sort of where we can expect that to go in the next little while.
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe I'll start and then and have Prab follow up. But certainly this is something that I've heard a lot about and have been asked, why are the big box stores open and the little guys can't open? And it all comes down to the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, who has guided everything that we've done here and decisions made by the government to keep people safe. The issue of allowing grocery stores and big box stores the ability to open is to try and limit the movement of people. And that's why we have a stay-at-home order in place as well, is to keep people at home, keep them from being in numerous different places throughout the day. So if the big box store is open, hopefully that individual who has to go out for their cornflakes and milk in the morning and may need a screwdriver can pick that up in the same spot. I know there are so many people out there that want to support their local businesses as well, which is why we kept the curbside in place as well. If you don't want to buy your screwdriver from the Walmart, since you raised Walmart, you can still go down to your local Home Hardware, phone ahead, they'll bring your screwdriver out to your vehicle for you. But it really comes down to limiting the mobility of people. And that was the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. So keeping you from hopping from one store to another. And the other is, if we were to open here in Bay of Quinte or Hastings and Prince Edward, we do know that people were coming from hot zones into our area where they couldn't shop. And that was happening particularly before Christmas. We saw that a lot. Everybody had Christmas shopping that they had to do, even if they were in the GTA. And if there was another region, and we saw this a lot with people from the GTA going to Hamilton and Burlington and that way. I don't know how much it was happening in our region, but I think it was happening some. So really it came down to limiting the mobility of people, trying to keep them in their regions. And that's why I think the province-wide lockdown was so important after Christmas. Prab, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just be very brief, but I think you put it very well. It's all about mobility, and as much as we advocate to our health officials, the epidemiologists really get to make the decision on this, which is a provincial health table in terms of what can and cannot be open, and it is aligned, and it is something that we've committed ourselves to from the provincial level to follow health guidelines. And we did put some restrictions on these big box stores. They can't have more than 25% capacity at any time. Restricted their hours. We even put forward as a government, significant campaigns to urge people to do curbside pickup, shop local, support small businesses, and also put forward the supports like the small business support grant of up to $20,000. So it is a very difficult situation, but this is something that really weighs on us, and it's something that we want to try to rectify as quick as possible. As soon as the health officials agree to it as well with us.
And we are optimistic too with the case counts coming down, particularly the low case counts in our area. We're really optimistic. But the other thing maybe that I should add is that there is a lot of concern out there about the variant or the variants. So either the UK or the South African variant. So health officials are really concerned about that, and they haven't quite wrapped their hands around just how widespread those cases are in the province. I'm sure you've probably all seen on the news about the outbreak at Roberta Place in the Barrie region in Simcoe. That's a concern. There's one case of the UK variant that's been identified in Kingston, even though Kingston has had almost no cases and sort of the same as us. There is the concern about that variant. So that's another thing that health officials are looking at. But overall, we're in a good place. So hopefully when the lockdowns are over, we'll be in a position with our health officials to announce something positive for our local businesses.
Okay, and just and let Jill
Can I
go
jump
ahead.
in?
Yeah.
Yeah, just because Suzanne and Leslie and I have been in great conversation with our health unit, and we understand that across the province there are challenges with contact tracing, but that is something that our health unit has worked so hard to make sure is under control. And out of all of the cases that we've had, I think maybe it's 1% that they haven't been able to actually identify, but none of those that they have ever been related to either in dining or shopping. So even with the influx of people that we had through the summer across this region, they were all protecting themselves. And I think we continue to have this kind of try to present the case that when our shop owners and our restaurants are following the protocol that they were told that had to be put in place, it does work. And it does protect our region from even those people who come from away. So just if you could take that forward, we'd love to know that your voice was saying that out loud.
Yeah, it's been saying that out loud. And I think it's really important to note that we did have record tourism this year in our region, or last year, I guess now, during the summer. When the GTA was still in a lockdown, Leslie's businesses down there in Prince Edward County especially, we're seeing an influx of people coming from Toronto, and they were staying in large part at the hotels in Belleville and Quinte West as well, and potentially visiting the residents and shops or the businesses and shops and restaurants that were open in Belleville and Quinte West. And we saw very few cases coming in spite of that record tourism draw to our region. So it's a point that we've made many times, and the concern still exists. And as I mentioned, like before Christmas, we saw numbers where COVID-19 cases were in the 80% of them were in Prab's region, like in Peel and York and Toronto. But then we started to see where it went from 70% and 30% were inside, and then it was down to less than 60% were in that area. So the cases were spreading. We're very fortunate, and I'm touching wood as I say this, that we haven't seen that spread in Hastings and Prince Edward or Kingston, Lennox and Addington. They're almost the same as we are. Lanark, Leeds, Grenville. So there's a large swath, and Prab will know this, that I refer to Eastern Ontario as being the same size as Nova Scotia, which it actually is when you look at up into the Ottawa Valley and over into Haliburton and then all the way out to Cornwall. So it's a large parcel of land where largely we haven't been impacted by COVID-19 cases. So I make that case often, and hopefully we can keep it up. I mean, it would be tragic if we did see cases start to rise. And we saw that once in Kingston at the nail salon that you're all very knowledgeable about probably, and there have been odds and ends here and there, and a slight rise in cases before Christmas. But for the most part, we've been doing extremely well in this area.
So just to follow up on that, then we're going to trust that you're going to push the message that, maybe Eastern Ontario could be treated very similarly as Northern Ontario has been, when we can, show that what's happening on the ground here is very different than what's happening on the ground in the GTA and, that whole horseshoe area on west of Toronto is definitely different than we are here. So we hope that, we can expect some good news in the weeks to come. One of the things that businesses have been asking for with all of these changes is a heads up, like enough notice that things are going to change. So given that the state of emergency and the stay-at-home order are going to be ending on the 9th of February, and then the enhanced workplace measures and health and safety measures are due to end on February the 11th at this point, which is less than 2 weeks away. should we be expecting some news next week on what we can expect for that second week in February?
We're discussing how to exit the province-wide lockdown and the stay-at-home order. There's still a lot of questions to be answered, and maybe while we've got Pravneet here, if you want to take that, Prav, and talk about it. We do know how important it is for businesses to have warning.
No, definitely, and I just want to reiterate, Suzanne, on your point before, in terms of the voice being heard at the table. I think Todd does a great job of that at the cabinet, whether it's with our health officials, the perspective that he brings in terms of Eastern Ontario and the low case counts is definitely something. I would say he's the strongest voice on that table for that type of perspective, and I think you really saw that before the province-wide lockdown. But and as we move forward in terms of a reopening, I completely agree with you. We've got to do a better job of giving a better lead time on some of these decisions, whether it's for restaurants, whether it's for retail shops in terms of inventories and being able to adjust for that. Sometimes, we do come across some challenges from just a logistical health perspective in terms of, how can we implement some of the measures very quickly? How can we react as quick as possible? At first you saw, the government, when we did go into a lockdown, we tried to give as much notice as possible, balancing the issue of, a very last minute kind of a panic buy from stores that might increase the risk for everybody as well. So it is a balancing act. We try to work with our health officials and try to bring that economic perspective to decisions like that when it comes to reopening. If there's businesses that are listening on the line today, if there's specific, if they think they've got great reopening advice in terms of, how, for example, a retail shop is going to be reopening in the local area, some of the mechanisms they've put forward, we'd be happy to take those and show the health table that here are some of what the businesses are doing. This is the protocols that they're going to take forward. And this is why we should allow them to open, or, even at some circumstances, adopt them as, standards across the province that, hey, if you want to open, we need to ensure whether it's contact tracing, whether it's disinfecting, that these processes exist across all these businesses. So, I urge members on the call that businesses that have those set up already, or that want to share some of those, we'd be happy to take those to our health tables and pitch those in as ways to allow businesses to open up safely, as you mentioned before as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I just saw a question come in around it, and I know that Jill and Leslie and I have had these conversations on our Ontario Chamber Network calls about, putting the rural areas of the province into lockdown to protect us from people from the hot zones coming here. And I think for many of us, we would like to see, as we come out of this province-wide shutdown, maybe more restrictions put on the people in the hot zones if that's necessary. We would like to get our rural economy back working as fast as possible. And if we've got zero case counts coming in on a regular basis, and our hospitals aren't overwhelmed and everything else, why continue to hurt our businesses when really what you're trying to do is keep the people in the hot zones in the hot zone? So have you talked about travel restrictions? Have you talked about curfews for those people that are in those parts of the province that are definitely being more impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we've certainly talked about it. What it comes down to, and we've talked about closing the border like the maritime bubble did, or like Manitoba had done. It really comes down to an enforcement issue and the ability to enforce something like that. I think we all realize that might be an answer. It's easier at Nova Scotia when the only way in is really at the border at Amherst and Sackville. Or even New Brunswick. There's not a whole lot of ways into the province. It's one highway in. And I think we did look at it with the Manitoba and Kenora situation in northwestern Ontario, where there's only one way in, and that's the Trans-Canada Highway. With Quebec, there are so many different ways to get into Ontario from from Quebec, it was going to be difficult to enforce something like that. And then obviously the same thing would occur when you're looking at different regions in the province. We're continuing to talk about those kinds of things, but really probably the only way we're going to be able to accomplish something like that is through communications and making sure that a stay in your region order exists if we were to move to something like this, but we haven't made any decisions to go that route yet. The other thing that I was going to mention too that Prab was talking about was, just how quickly things can change. I mean, we want to give businesses enough time to adapt, but we saw a perfect example of this a couple of weeks ago when the schools were set to reopen on the Monday. And then I think the Wednesday before, we get information from the science table and from the health officials that over the holidays, kids, school-aged kids, their positivity rate had skyrocketed. And so we had to make a quick decision to keep the schools closed when we fully anticipated the schools being open on that particular day. And so I know that throws parents and families into a lot of chaos as well. So we do understand how important it is to give that advance notice to businesses and families. But man, when this stuff is coming at you quick, and certainly we're all sort of sitting on pins and needles, hoping that the variant doesn't show up by the hundreds or thousands of cases in the province, that we don't end up in a situation where we're having to make last-minute calls.
Okay, so maybe we'll move on. And I think we'll leave it at that. We know that you're going to be our voice around that table and push on behalf of the business community here to get our region opened up as quickly as possible. One of the big items that's come out in the last couple of weeks was the Ontario Business Support Grant. And just wondering, has there been good uptake of that grant by the business community? And I have a question around, there's also related to that, and I know it came out in the Ontario Economic Report today, that the energy savings that was part of the package of grants that the Ontario government did has been seen as really important by the business community. But oil heating was left off of that. And here in our rural area, we do have quite a few people that rely on oil to heat their homes and their businesses. And just wondering why that was left off, and would you consider looking at that?
Yeah, Prab, I don't know if you have the numbers for Bay of Quinte, but I think you have Ontario numbers, right, when it comes to those accessing business supports.
Yeah, I have the total number. I haven't broken it down by region, but total application uptick has been 57,000 as of last night on the program. And I think it's largely due. It's one of the programs that has been utilized the most. It's really a simple application. If you go through that, on the web page, it won't take you more than 15 to 20 minutes to fill out the application. You need your business information. You need your banking information as to where the account transfer has to go to. And then lastly, I think the only information you need is to calculate what your April 2019 revenue was versus your April 2020 revenue was. And if there's a 20% decline, then you are eligible for that program. Now, if you're a seasonal business, there are different requirements, because we take into consideration that not everybody's April 29 versus April 2020 will be an accurate way to measure a revenue loss for a business. So seasonal business, both winter and summer businesses have an exception, and then also new businesses. So I know a lot of the federal programs left out the support programs for new businesses, and so this program takes into consideration new businesses, and so they are also eligible to apply for this new support program and grant. And any business that is eligible will get at a minimum $10,000 up to a $20,000. Along with all the other support. In terms of the energy costs, that's something that we can definitely flag for Minister Minister Rickford and his team. I know that natural gas, hydro, they were all, the intention of that program is to cover all those costs for businesses if they're heating through that way. So through that mechanism. So we can definitely flag that with Minister Rickford and ensure his office is on it. If you have any examples, please do email those whether it's through Minister Smith's office to our team or to Minister Rickford's team. We'd be happy to take a look at that and get to the bottom of that ASAP.
Okay, Leslie, I think you had some questions you were going to ask.
Yeah, I know that we're short on Minister Sarkaria's time here. I'm just being aware of the clock for him. And I, with your specialty in small business and your focus there, I do see one of the questions I want to make sure we get brought up before you leave us. The status of expanding high-speed internet in Eastern Ontario. This has been an advocacy piece for the Prince Edward County Chamber, and I know our municipality a lot. It impacts our small businesses' ability to grow and develop in our community. Has that accelerated, that file? Is that moving forward? When can we see some better internet in our area?
I think, Leslie, I think now more than ever, we've recognized how important it is to make sure our entire province is connected with high-speed internet and broadband. Minister Scott actually just a couple months ago announced even further funding up to $1 billion now to across the province to be able to connect rural areas. Even when we look at programs like Digital Main Street, the reason we're rolling it out, those programs, historic investments, and asking businesses to go digital, is because we recognize how important e-commerce or the digitization of these businesses is in order for their survival. We've put forward significant investments. We've increased almost double the funding this year to $1 billion from a broadband perspective. And I know Todd's raised this issue multiple times at the cabinet table, multiple times in discussions as we look at from not even a recovery from a COVID lens, but in terms of competitiveness for these businesses, not only to survive today but to survive over the next 2 to 5 years. We need to ensure that they have access to reliable high-speed internet and the investments to back it up. I do think that there's a significant federal component to this as well, where the provincial government has put forward significant supports. We'll also need to cooperate with the cooperation of the federal government to get these investments going and out the door. But I think there's a significant opportunity here. We're completely committed to that, and I know MPPs like Todd Smith have been huge advocates for that at Queen's Park to see that happen as soon as possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's great that there's a lot of funding and programs like the Digital Main Streets and that to get businesses online. But if businesses can't get online in the first place, having an updated website or a online shopping site doesn't do any good, unfortunately.
Put the pressure on the feds really is what I would say. We've put up over $1 billion, and the feds have put up $1.7 billion for the whole country. So they need to do more, and we need to keep the pressure up on them to sit at the table with us. We're at the point now where we may have to just go it alone because they're not participating to the level that they should be. So write Neil a letter and let him know that
always
to push our favorite ministers on Parliament Hill to get moving on this.
Yeah.
And Prime Minister too.
I do want to ask one other question of Minister Sarkaria. That I think is quite important is when will we see an expansion to the small business grant? One of our attendees here is asking about the non-essential construction company not being eligible and not being able to work. When can we see an expansion of that program? Is that in discussion?
Leslie, one of the things that anytime we roll out a program, we want to make sure that we hear from businesses across the province. Many times we've made adjustments to programs. There are significant other supports for some of these businesses that are out there, but I recognize that the construction side, this is something that was brought up to us just last week. I'm having conversations with, our Minister of Finance, Peter Bethenvaldi, on the eligibility criteria of how they could potentially be expanded. But it's great feedback from businesses as we kind of continue to roll out some of these programs. Sometimes some are missed out. Even in terms of the PPE grant program, this is something that we're looking at seeing, how can we get more uptake? How can we get more participation in it? So, we're always, looking forward to ideas and suggestions from business owners or from businesses that have been impacted or might have been overlooked. And we want to be able to ensure that everybody that needs the support is getting it. So I can commit to you that I will raise that and bring that up with our team and see how we can work to, from an eligibility criteria, how we can ensure that as many businesses that need the support get the support. But in the meantime, I also do want to suggest that there are still some other supports that are available, and we haven't seen as many businesses pick up on, whether it's the energy relief, energy property tax relief, PPE grants, or even some of the federal programs. So I'll also encourage many of those that might not be eligible for this support grant at the moment to also take advantage of the programs that currently exist as well. But I look forward to working with those businesses and you, Leslie, to bring that to the attention of our team as well.
I think one of the issues, and I know lots of the pre-submitted questions were around vaccines and vaccine rollout, and I know that that's an issue that sort of crosses both levels of government. The federal government is definitely in charge of the procurement of that, but certainly the province has each province is deciding how they're going to roll it out, who are their priorities. Now, I know here in the Quinte region, we do have a lot of privately owned long-term care homes. Thankfully, and I'm going to knock on wood as well, we've been able to ensure that everybody that's living there and is staying safe, and the staff is staying safe. But what is, I know that this has come up a lot in the media, is the government looking at making changes to long-term care homes? Should those businesses, those people that own long-term care homes, be worried that there's going to be changes coming that may make them lose their livelihood?
You're not talking about the vaccine, you're talking about changes to their business model or
to that. And also, I guess the other part of that too around the vaccine part is we also have private providers of health services. I'm thinking of, we have companies that provide home services, PSW type services, also patient transfer companies. They're in and out of all the nursing homes, out of the hospitals, dealing with elderly patients. So I guess both sides of it, we have had, like, the private sector has become quite integrated with our public health system, providing extra businesses. And I know when we're talking about legislation coming in the future, especially on the long-term care homes, but also with the vaccine rollout, as those private companies, where are they going to fit in with getting some priority for their employees on the rollout of that?
Yeah, so what I would say is it's the priority to get the residents of long-term care vaccinated first. The Premier's been very open about the fact that those vulnerable people should be done by February 5th. Now, with the delays regarding the Pfizer vaccine and the federal procurement process, that could be delayed a little bit because we just don't have the vaccines. But the plan is in place, and we're working with our local health unit. They're responsible for putting together the plan on how that rollout will go ahead. And we had a couple of the long-term care facilities already perform the first round of the vaccines earlier this week and last weekend, actually. And so they're a little bit unclear as to how that's going to continue to roll out, given the question marks around when we're going to get the supply. So that was the goal first. Sorry, I've got things popping up on my screen here. That was the goal. That was the goal, to get those long-term care residents vaccinated first and are most vulnerable. If we do that, that will also allow us to start to roll out the opening of the economy too. So when it comes to long-term care facilities, we have a pretty good mix of public and private facilities, and I think we need that. We need more long-term care beds in the province, and the services are desperately needed. We didn't have very many long-term care facilities built over the last 15 years. I can think of one in my riding, and it's not even in my riding, it's in my former riding of Prince Edward Hastings up in Tweed at Moira Place. That was the last one that we've had built. So we've announced new beds and new facilities across the Quinte region. There's been a commitment by the Ministry of Long-Term Care to build more beds, private and municipal. Municipal, the perfect example is down in Prince Edward County in Picton at HJ McFarland, where they will build a brand new facility down there. But we need all the beds we can get, and more importantly, we need the staffing. It's not about the bricks and mortar entirely, it's about the staffing. And so there is a plan in place to create 27,000 more jobs in long-term care. And at the same time, the Premier has made a commitment to the 4 hours of care per day per resident, which is huge. And that's going to be phased in over the next 3 or 4 years. Which is going to allow us, obviously, to do the hiring we need. We need the health human resources to make something like that come to pass. So it's not just like snapping your fingers and seeing these beds created, but we need a mix. And quite honestly, the private sector is able to build these facilities quickly, and it's important for us to make sure that we have the regulations in place that are going to keep those individuals safe and give them the care that they need.
Jill, did you have any questions? I know that we're running into the last part of the session today. I didn't know if you had any questions that you've received from some of your members.
No, but I do really appreciate the idea that we can have that I can solicit my members for all the things that they're doing to be safe. I'll send those emails on to you right away. I mean, I think anytime we can engage our business community in an effort where they might see a positive reaction to that interaction is important. And so I have to thank you, Brad, for giving us that opportunity, because I seriously will see if that doesn't help move the needle a little bit on that perspective. You also mentioned something about the need for, or the opportunity for private care to facilitate some of the need in terms of supporting healthcare. And we are in the middle of a conversation around that a little bit, because we know that both childcare and healthcare are two areas where the wage rates are really impacting ability of private and public to, the competition is stiff, and the wage rates aren't necessarily attractive to bringing more people into those particular types of work. Not even to get into the concept of the fact that they're generally supported by female workers. So I think that there's a big conversation about to happen around that, but it's good to know your door is open to considering that is a huge issue.
Jill, there very much is a conversation happening about that, and it's actually happening at 2 o'clock between me and the Premier and the Minister of Health and the Minister of Long-Term Care. So that's why I have to go. Prab, I don't know if you have to go. Feel free to go. I just want to say thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule, and thanks for everything that your office is doing to help support our small business community out there.
Thank you so much. I look forward to working with all of you and helping in any way possible, and working with my great colleague Todd, who is an incredible voice at Queen's Park. So thanks again for having me. An absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Prab.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing to Jill's comment. It's really, really important that when the economy does open again, that everybody is practicing the health guidelines in their facilities. So I don't know how many of you saw this, but on the weekend, we did have a blitz here in Hastings and Prince Edward County of the big box stores, but also those other smaller stores that are able to open right now. So 208 workplaces were visited in our two counties. and 12 tickets were issued, but they found that 51% of the businesses, so just over half of the 208, so that would be about 103, weren't following public health guidelines, or didn't have a plan in place, or were allowing too many people into their facilities. So it's got to be, critically important for everybody who owns a business in Hastings and Prince Edward to assure, first of all, that they know what the rules are and what the guidelines are that have come out from public health, and then follow those to a T. Otherwise, that's going to be difficult for us. So, and we may see cases rise. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's the latest information that came from Labor Training and Skills Development, and they've been doing these crackdowns of big box stores, but they've been also taking the time to visit some of the other essential businesses that are operating and allowing people into their stores. I don't have a list of what those stores were or retailers were that were visited on the weekend, but I think it probably comes down to not knowing exactly what the rules are.
Yeah,
Todd, sorry, Suzanne, to jump in. I just, as we are close to wrapping up, and we do have the benefit of having you as the Minister of Child, your big long sentence, child welfare. I do see a very adamant Virginia question, and it does touch my heart as well, as my nephew has autism as well. And is that the progress of the autism program still moving forward? And can you give us an update on that while we have you on the call? Yep. It does affect workforce and healthcare and ability to go to work for a lot of people when they have their children at home like this.
Yeah, no question. So the autism program, we are continuing to roll it out. So many governments over the past have gotten this one wrong, and so I've had my head down on this for a year and making sure that we get the program right, and we should have an update on what's happening on this file very, very soon. So we've been working with the implementation working group, which is a group of experts, clinicians, and community members from the autism community that have been making key decisions, and those were the recommendations that we got from the autism panel, which worked for basically the whole summer of 2019 to put these recommendations together. So we've invested $300 million more in the program, so we're up to $600 million for the autism program in Ontario, and a needs-based program is just around the corner.
Thank you for taking that moment.
So just wanted to ask, so one of the last things I wanted to touch on, because I know that we did have a ton of questions that came in around vaccinations, and we couldn't get to all of them today. And so much of it is still, it's hypothetical because there's no vaccines to actually give out right now. But one of the things, and this has come up a few times over my inbox in the last couple of months, will the province give some clear direction to employers on what they're going to be able to insist or not insist from their employees? I know there's been a question that's been put in there about can an employer insist that their employees get the vaccine? Is it going to, everyone's so careful around the Ontario Human Rights Code and the employer, all the different codes and regulations. But I know that as the vaccine becomes more available, I think what businesses are going to need from the province is some clear rules around what employers can expect from their employees. So I know we don't have it for today, but if you could certainly make sure that's part of what the government's working on.
Yeah, I can just tell you right now that the government isn't mandating anyone to get the vaccine. We hope that everyone will get it, but we understand some won't. But to your question about how do employers handle this, it's a very good question, and probably would require the Attorney General to answer that, and not the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services.
Yeah, so that could be part of the package of helpful information that the government makes available to employers over the next few months. That would be great. And I think we're pretty well out of time. I know many people may have questions they want to send directly to your office. So I believe we have a slide, if we want to put that up, which has the information, contact information for your office here in the riding. So I know you've got great staff there that are able to take those calls, answer these emails, and deal directly with some of these issues that businesses are having.
Yep, absolutely. Operators are standing by. We've been so busy, and thanks to everybody for their patience. You know, there are questions that my office staff do have the answer for at their fingertips, and others that they have to do a little bit of research for, because you know, it hasn't always been clear what the rules are at times, and there are some gray areas in all of these different sectors that we're talking about. So yeah, feel free to reach out to the office at any time and get your questions answered. We'll try to get them answered as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay, and I think that that's going to wrap it up. Any final thoughts, Jill, from you?
Thank you, Suzanne, for bringing us on board. Thank you, MPP Smith, for being here. It's great, always.
Leslie?
Thank you as well. Struggling to find my mute button. I was trying to write Virginia back a "you're welcome anytime." It's what we do. So now I'm not going to type it in, Virginia. Thanks everybody for joining us today. This was a great turnout. Thanks so much.
And we'll definitely make sure that the questions that were sent in ahead of time that did not get answered today, we'll make sure that they get sent to our MPP's office, and we'll make sure that those answers get to you. Thank you, everybody. We'll do this again in the future, and I hope that, you know, that February 9th date, we'll get some news next week. I'm assuming we're not going to get anything before February 9th. I think that was a question that came in, is that we've been told if that's going to be the earliest date that things will change. Is that correct?
That seems fair to me.
Okay, so just wanted to, that was one of the last minute questions that came in. So we're all in this until that date. So hopefully, you know, we'll start to open things up again. And I know that at that time, we may need to bring you back and talk to us again about what is going on in this region with our local business community at that time. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.